Welcome to Booked It. This is the first YouTube episode for Booked It Podcast. If you're currently listening to this on the podcast app, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Booked It Podcast to watch it live. And now to the episode. Scarlet Takes a Tumble, Double Rainbow Guy, Mother Teresa. They all have one thing in common. How'd they all get so famous? No, but seriously, I need to talk about a way overinflated problem. And it's that in the Broadway community, we think we're way more famous than we are. We think we're famous at all, first of all. We think we're the Rolling Stones, but we're Nickelback. We think we're West Side Story, but we're Urban Cowboy. We think we're the Shawshank Redemption, but we're Ernest Goes to Jail. But we can't really blame us in the Broadway community for thinking we're more famous than we are. Social media has made us think we're more famous than we are. I'm a vacation swing in Hamilton for 2 weeks, and all of a sudden I have 50,000 people wanting to know what brand of whey I use in my protein shake. Broadway couples have made themselves famous by posting every second of their relationship on social media. Hey girls, just because you look so happy in your daily beach picture with your boyfriend Tucker doesn't change the fact that he's never pleased you sexually. But the problem with this is that everyone is famous now, so no one is famous. I'm doing it too. I think I'm famous enough to start a YouTube channel. If you were on Broadway back in the day, no one knew who you were until you transitioned to film. That's why even us Broadway folks see lists of names in shows and we have no idea who they are. But now, even in Tanzania, they know George Salazar. Michael in the bathroom. But as social media use has risen, the value of fame has gone down. Back when the original cast of Pippin was on Broadway, if you had 100,000 people knowing what you were up to, you were famous! But now everyone has 100,000 followers. I follow an optometrist who posts shirtless pictures of himself who has 500,000 fans. By the way, I kind of want the guy putting his fingers in my eye to feel excited about something other than his pecs. Broadway people are manufacturing their fame on their own social media pages. They're not famous. They believe they're famous. We only respond to our very small bubble that appears on social media. We're like the little boy from Room. Our news feed is the whole world. And if we believe we're famous, then we believe we're entitled to the things that fame begets. And a society where everyone thinks they're the center of the world is not a good one. It's not just acting, it's all career paths. Doctors, pastors, fluffers. And what we're finding out in the most brutal way at the moment is that Instagram followers do not necessarily translate to financial success on Broadway. The musical Be More Chill, for example, had literally millions of streams, Instagram followers around the world. When the off-Broadway production opened, it was poised to become the next Rent. Why would the producers not transfer it to Broadway? Everything about it looked like it was a go. But the show couldn't even run 6 months, and it's currently millions of dollars in the hole. Social media fame is a myth. Miranda Sings has millions and millions of followers. So many that she got a Netflix series that no one even knew about. Part of the issue, I think, is that people who are famous on Instagram give away their product for free, so nobody wants to pay for it. If you're a Barbra Streisand or a Chris Rock fan, you have to go see them live to really get their product. They're using Instagram as a tool for promotion, not the product itself. Chris Rock doesn't post his jokes on Instagram. Rihanna doesn't live tweet her songs. The comedian Gallagher didn't smash watermelons on his story. They actually value their product enough that they don't give it away until you pay for it, which is why I do a podcast for which I'm currently $11,000 in debt. Taylor Swift doesn't know who the fuck I am, and that's okay. When I want to feel love, I do what any well-adjusted person does. I have sex with a stranger. Now, let's go to the one place where we can really deal with any of these issues. Ripley Grier. Here to talk about this is the very famous, with 888 followers, Broadway veteran of 19 Broadway shows and booked it favorite, Lisa Gajda.
You gave me one extra Broadway show, I think.
I thought I was going to say I gave you one extra follower. It's 887.
It's 888 followers, and I think 18 Broadway shows, but I don't even remember anymore.
Well, we've been saying 19 Broadway shows since we started this, so...
Probably. Is it 19? I don't think so.
Well, we don't have time to count them because, we have to give away the room in a minute. Speaking of which, hello to our guests at home. We're at Ripley Grier, the wonderful Ripley Grier. I can smell the defeat in the air.
Yeah.
Mark Shaman texted me. He goes, I'm at Pearl Studios. I smell the stench of defeat.
That is one of many very unpleasant stenches at all of the,
It is. Okay, let's talk about it for 1 second. Ripley Grier. By the way, you probably, if you've auditioned, you probably have never seen this room before because this is like the sound studio. And the reason we love it in here is that no one's ever auditioned in this space.
No, there's no pain.
There's no pain, right? It's like when you go to an Indian burial ground.
Yeah.
You're like something's wrong here.
Yeah.
This is like,
it's clean.
It's clean.
Yeah.
This house is clean.
Yeah, this house is clean.
It's right because no one ever has humiliated themselves in front of a group of people.
No.
I don't think.
Smells like dignity in here.
It smells like dignity. When you walk next door to 10F,
no.
you're like someone cracked. You know what I mean?
Somebody cracked while I was waiting to come in here.
So let's talk about Ripley Grier. There's something about it, like when you. Because, again, I'm a music director. You were an actress for a really long time. I still consider you an actress because you're still a fucking Ripley. There's something about when you're in the elevator at Ripley Grier, like I start to feel, I don't really have any reason to feel anxious personally.
Yeah.
And even I start to sweat when I get in the elevator here. What is it?
I mean, it's the cast of characters. First of all, there's like you spend a lot of time waiting for the elevator. Like, isn't that true? There's like a lot of, like, you sing horribly, and then you wait for 7 hours for an elevator.
And then you get in the elevator with other people that you almost never want to be in there with for whatever reason.
Well, because we've actually talked about there's the person speaking to the elevator, like performing for the elevator. That was me. And who else? There's the braggart.
There's the person performing. There's the braggart. There's the crier. There's like the person who's like sort of pouting and in the corner and sad in the elevator, and you don't want to talk to them because you don't want to upset them even further.
That's right.
I mean, it's like a psych ward in here, basically.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's somebody like doing there's somebody like in it.
Somebody's practicing.
Yeah, somebody's practicing. It's just all.
Someone's warming up. Usually, someone's in the corner going.
There's a war. It's everything. Like if you were to take like all the parts of yourself that you like the least and put them in an elevator. That's basically what it is, right?
It's
and
like,
there's waiting.
It's like the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. It's also when you're in... The other thing about the elevators here at Ripley is the door takes so fucking long to close. You notice that?
So
like
someone sneaks in.
So you're like in there, you're like, oh, I'm in a packed elevator. I really want to start moving. I'm miserable. And then it's like the door starts to close.
Yep.
And the person puts their hand and you're like, oh, thanks so much. And I'm like... I give them the eyes and say, you're dead to me.
That's right. Better not be auditioning for me, Mother Scratcher.
I was like, you better not be auditioning for me, and you better not see me outside of this building because I'll kill you.
That's right. There's like bags with stinky fucking clothes and books of music.
The thing is, we've now opened, though, for the Broadway community and I guess the rest of the theater community, Open Jar Studios, which I told you haven't been to yet.
I have not. I'll never be there.
It's this beautiful studio space like on 49th Street, and everyone is like, have you been to Open Jar Studios? You got to go to Open Jar. It's amazing. It's gorgeous. It's so fantastic. And I said, give it a week. Yeah. Give it a year.
Wait until people are voiding. Wait until everybody starts voiding in the bathroom at Open Jar and pacing the fucking halls.
The only reason it isn't a hellhole is because it hasn't been filled with despair and insecurity and pain long enough yet.
That's right. And show makeup.
And everyone walking on full beat, trying to heal their broken childhoods.
It's just ghosts and terror and anxiety and pain and suffering and jealousy and envy and competition and
why aren't we teaching this to the BFA programs in like in University of Michigan? This should be a required class where you're like where you're like, this is like how you're going to be doing this every day, and how do you navigate the painful experience of going to Ripley Grier every day?
I mean, I feel like I'm overly negative because like I say this every time, but like I just finished doing this like just a couple of years ago, and the pendulum has swung. So for like 30 years, I was like, no, it's great. So like now that I don't have to do it anymore, like the pendulum. So I don't want to like.
It's like when people come back from war, like they're usually okay right when they get back. Yeah. It's the PTSD starts a year and a half later.
That's right.
And that's when they start killing people.
I would like to put myself in the category of people that actually put their lives on the line.
Right. Soldiers in combat in Afghanistan, people at the open call for Greece.
Absolutely.
It's just right there.
Here's the horror, and I mean this with no disrespect to people that actually do things as important as fight our wars, but it feels like the same thing to the actor. And I know that's a shameful thing to admit. But
it's like levels of bravery. Fighter pilot.
Yeah.
Tap dancer. Let's see.
Totally. Untalented tap dancer.
We'll let the untalented tap dancer or untalented fighter pilot. Oh, do you really want to be?
Thing.
Do you want to? Well, there is no such thing because that's true. There's a lot of people. This is another actual point. There's a lot of people doing what you did very well for a long time that like really sadly like should not be there.
Yeah.
Like, when you go to like dental school, like there's not 90% of the room that is like never going to get there. But like when you go to an open call for a cruise ship show, almost everyone there is like is delusional.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's right.
Like when you get to the higher level, they're not delusional, but they're delusional at a lower level. And it's like no other field has such level of delusion.
It's part of it. And I would argue still that there is a level of delusion all the way to the goddamn top.
Oh, maybe more so.
Yeah, because there's like still like pockets. Like there's like a dancer who's just like an amazing dancer who just is like, why am I not doing Mara Maisie's part?
Right.
Yeah,
Totally.
all my references are going to be from my era.
Yes.
And Mara Maisie, who is the most...
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace.
Yes.
And I bring her up because she was so goddamn glorious.
Yes, of course.
You will never do that part because you do not have those skills.
But people know who Mara Maisie is today. Like, that's not a reference. You don't need to... I mean, but you're saying stuff...
No, everyone knows who she is, but like, I'm just warning you. Like, I'm thinking Kiss Me Kate. Like, everything I do is... It's a
little bit behind. But I think Broadway people that watch us, like, we know the shows from the golden age of Broadway, and we weren't there, I think, right? I mean, like,
that's right.
I can reference, like, I remember Gypsy, but like I didn't see that with Ethel Merman.
I think because I didn't know any shows from before. I only know the shows I did in my era, and I don't know any of the shows from now.
That's actually great, like, because you weren't
I'm not a theater geek, unfortunately.
A lot of the theater kids that I myself included, it's like we kind of knew where we came from, like, we knew
as you should.
Do you feel like the Broadway community, when you started doing this, your first Broadway show was what year, if you don't mind me asking?
So I'm guessing it was somewhere around like 1995. It was the Who's Tommy was my first Broadway show.
Right. So mid-90s.
Yeah.
So, no one had social media or even, no one had the internet at home yet. I mean, what has changed as far as the vibe? Because like by the you were doing shows your last Broadway show was a year ago or something, right?
3 years ago.
Recently.
Yeah.
So when people had Instagram and social media, I mean, what vibe did you notice changed from when you started to when you ended with the invention of social media?
So I feel like we were always the same the same group. We're the same group with the same strengths and weaknesses and tendencies and like. But I just like social media is just like a thing that you can plug into the worst part of us and then explode and diarrhea out onto the world.
It is.
So, it was like, so basically the other thing too is like genuinely it's a more anxious time for people in show business. They're never off duty. They're in a constant self-promotion mode. They feel they have to be and maybe they do. So there's also, it was less, I mean, we were like still a mess. Like there were still people like, at Tommy being like, why is my back hurt? Dramatic or whatever.
Well, of course. But that's a really great point is that it is, being an actor is now a 24-hour-a-day gig.
Yeah.
If you look at it, and I've heard people say that a social media account is a requirement to be a Broadway. I heard a
I
casting
believe,
director say
yeah.
this, and I don't think he's wrong.
I don't either.
He said, he goes, if you want to be an actor today, he's like, it's pretty much a requirement to have a social media account. I'm like, that also means that you're on duty 24 hours a day.
And you're so you're not, then again, like I always say, I probably say this every time we meet, but then the amount of time you could be investing in your craft, which is for you, it's a real thing. So like I and the people around me, like if you were like super ambitious and I was a barracuda amongst barracudas.
You were drinking diet fuel
I was
for
drinking
breakfast. Right?
diet. Yeah, it was very important to me to win. And but we could. So the way I expressed that was I would like try and become a really great dancer. And I expended all my energy on being. I was in class like all day, every day, 7 days a week, and so we would take classes, whatever. I think people are still doing that, but with the addition of this social media thing and more, I think investing more in something that can only make them anxious, as opposed to investing in something that's real. So like if you make yourself good at something, that also belongs to you. It doesn't just get you stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. The other thing too I want to ask is that when you were doing this, like, and you were in the ensemble, and believe me, I'm not undercutting what you did at all, but like, you were not famous, like you did not have 100,000 people that knew who you were when you were in the ensemble of Kiss Me Kate. Like, of course, anyone that came to see the show would be like, look at that brilliant dancer. I admire her. And they might look in the program and say, she's brilliant. I will remember her name. But this idea that today, like, I'm not just saying you, I mean anyone, even Broadway people that were like above the title on a Broadway show in the 70s. Now, when you're in the ensemble of Hamilton, you have 100,000 followers.
So unhealthy.
That, you know what I mean? And like, I'm not disrespecting the level of talent today that you need to be at any point to get into a Broadway show.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an extraordinary talent, but I'm saying the level of fame that we've achieved from that is high. But because of that, as I said earlier, now no one is famous.
Yeah.
Because all these people have 100,000 followers. So I go home to my Instagram account. I don't have 100,000 followers yet. Which camera am I looking at? So, but, I'm like, I look at it and I say, 100,000 people. Like, I post something funny and I have 50,000 people say, ha, ha, ha.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm a genius.
Yeah.
It's not a good
Nothing
society.
about it is good.
It's not a good society to live in where we all, our level of importance is inflated, but the reality of it is we're not famous because everyone is.
Just wait until you're 50, because even less matters. Like nothing matters. Like I remember being in like shows where like the famous person liked me, and like they'd leave the show and come back during the run of the show and not recognize me, like not know who I was.
Well, that was Robert Goulet was like, hello, who the fuck are you?
Not even old people. Like the only there's like one famous person who really was my friend. Like it was real. My point is like
enough about Martha Plimpton.
We haven't talked about Martha yet today.
I saw. We got to do a segment. Martha. That's what we have. We have to do a segment for that. I saw a show with rest in peace, the brilliant Robert Goulet, and when he was like I saw Lacage, and every time I mention a Broadway show, by the way, I almost am inclined to be like, were you in that? Because you could have been in it.
I was around. I was doing another show during that time.
I turned it down to do something else. But he, God rest his soul, the man was so old. He came on stage, and I remember like there'd be a big crowd scene on stage, and he would be like, there'd be silence on stage, and somebody in the ensemble would go with their mic off, let's go to the park. And he'd go, yes, let's go to the park. And then like, it was obviously somebody was covering for him. And then he would start to walk off stage. Someone in the ensemble would take him, turn him the other way, and push him off into the wings. Like, it felt like the entire show,
Aww.
every line of dialogue he had was said by somebody else with their mic off, so you knew that it wasn't supposed to be them actually saying it. That poor ensemble, I was like, they're literally all covering for him.
Right.
Because you have Broadway royalty on stage.
Absolutely.
I believe it is time for our first segment here on Booked It. So, as you know, here at Booked It, we get submissions of, we do the Grateful Status of the Week, and we have submissions of either really egregious or obnoxious things that people post on social media that we just love to recognize and we want to share with the world. So people send us things, and we encourage you to send us anything that you found on Facebook that you hate, and we're going to include the link somewhere on the screen right now. I don't know where it is, and hopefully our tech people will figure that out. But this is something that was submitted to us. This is an actor who he is upset that he auditioned. There was a show, there's a reading of a musical happening about a boy with diabetes. And he himself is diabetic and said that he was not able to be seen for the diabetes musical, despite not actually being diabetic. So this is a segment that we call Sheldon, Drink Your Juice.
Shelby, hold on. Clary's getting you some juice. Shelby. Should I get her a cookie? No, juice is better.
This man says, the direct quote is, been a diabetic for 20 years, and I couldn't get in the room for a workshop of a musical about a boy with diabetes. And then someone comments, seriously? That's incredibly insulting. Okay, so please.
What do you say? It's like, what is going on? Like, totally, again, like, get off my lawn. I don't belong here anymore. Like, in this, what are we telling? What is the message people are getting that they feel like they're, because they have that an actor playing a part with diabetes has to actually have diabetes, or that it entitled? It's like, I have herpes simplex 1. I have
can't wait to see that musical.
Yeah, herpes. I didn't get called in for the herpes musical.
Cold sore the musical.
Yeah, migraine the musical. Chronic gas.
You get that, Wyoming? But this sort of does actually run into a bigger conversation, which is like, can we start playing outside of our own type? I mean, I'm not going to go there, because if you've been listening to this podcast, I've been talking about this for years now. But the whole argument of, can straight people play gay parts? I mean, I'm not going to, do not let me go there, because we'll be here for 6 hours. But that's a separate episode. But this idea of like, do you need to be diabetic to play in the diabetes musical?
Or are you entitled to an audition because you happen to have diabetes?
It's ridiculous.
No.
Now, the other thing is that I want to hear your thoughts on this. I talked to a casting director. They're doing a reading of a musical about someone who's autistic.
Okay.
And they're looking for someone actually autistic to play the part. And I said, okay, that's interesting. The problem with that, I suppose, not the problem, but the issues that will arise with that is that autism is very much a spectrum. Yeah. Like you could be very mildly autistic and have a fully functional life with a full-time job and kids and a wife and be a very functioning member of society, or you could be nonverbal.
Yeah.
So the question is like, how, sorry to put it so bluntly, but like, how autistic do you have to be to play in the autism musical? And I'm not insulting anybody as much as saying like, how do you answer this question? Like,
will it ever be enough, or will
you be autistic enough to be in the autistic musical?
Because
you could look at somebody and say, like, you could look at somebody and be like, what are you talking about? He's not autistic at all. But he's like, no, I actually am a little tiny bit on the spectrum.
Yeah. I mean, that's a complicated, I love that they're going first. I mean, I see no problem in like, wow, this would be amazing. Somebody, what could a person bring that has had this experience? And we give so that sounds like a great idea. But yeah, I mean, I guess the question will always be with our side, the left, we're just the worst.
I know.
Will it ever be enough? Will they find a reason to be upset, or, whoever they are? But I think it's a great, and then of course, if they can't cast, hopefully they'll find somebody, but if they can't cast somebody with autism, will it be okay with people for them to go in the direction of somebody who doesn't have autism?
Right. And the same question arises like with casting issues of race. I would love to, got two, always great to have
it's a room full of whiteys.
A room full of whites. No, but I do want to bring this up when I have people of color on here. As soon as I meet them. No, just kidding. No, as soon as they're willing to come on here. It's like if you're going to be in Evita, like you can be of like they want people of Latino descent. Do you have to be Argentinian? Is the question. You know what I mean? Like how
are we going that far? I'm out of the loop.
No, well, I don't know if we're going that far. Yeah. But the question is like, if you're going to be like, just say you want someone to be black in the musical, it's like, do they have to be black or do they have to pass for black? And like that's a complicated question. And I don't have an answer for it. But like because like there are people that could pass for like African American that may not be. Sure. And the question is, is it okay to cast that person in a show where they're supposed to be black?
I can see. Look, I think it's great. Like, I feel like because people have been sort of pushed out. I mean, while I was in musical theater, and I remember conversations where like there would be like a musical set in the 40s at the pier or something. I don't remember exactly what it was, but like people that are like dancing, maybe Steel Pier. I don't know. I don't think I am speaking of specifically. And being like, wow, there are like no people of color in that show at all. And people were always like, they wouldn't be there,
Right.
kind of a thing. And I remember at the time, even because I'm ahead of my time and kind of spectacular. No, I just remember being like, that's kind of bullshit.
You think it's bullshit that there wouldn't have been black people there.
If you look at Hamilton, I mean, if you look at Hamilton, you're like, it doesn't matter if there would or wouldn't have been people of color there at the time. I think that staying true to that particular whatever. This is so boring, and I'm not really.
No, it's
smart.
not. It's not boring.
But
it's not boring, and you are smart.
Well,
but finish what you're saying, because that's.
All you have to do is see Hamilton once to understand how the shade of somebody's skin doesn't mean that they can't embody anything from any time, any energy, any character. So I like this new movement of like, let's just cast people that are the right person for the thing.
Sure.
But it's just like everything that we do, we just go, everything we do that's right, then it becomes like, why isn't that person suffering from diabetes? Like we always have to take it to the neck. We always have to go until we're wrong. You know?
There was a complicated issue. Like there was a revival of All My Sons, the Arthur Miller play last year, where a famous Gregory Mosher director wanted he wanted to cast a black person in a certain role, and the Arthur Miller's estate actually said this doesn't work with a black person because it's set in a specific year. It's like World War II era Ohio, and the Arthur Miller estate, which is hired to protect the writing, they said this actually, like, we don't want a black person playing this role, and the director resigned, and he was like, well, fuck you then. They got Jack O'Brien, who's a brilliant director, and he made it work in his own way, and I'm not here to say who's in the wrong or who's in the right for that, but it was a really interesting discussion because certainly the Arthur Miller estate is not averse to having people of color in their shows. They do all the time and on this level. But in this particular play, in this particular part, they were saying this is going against either the spirit or they said no. And again, I'm not here to be a jury on that, but it's a complicated thing. But they said we're okay with you casting a person of color in this role, this role, this role, or this role, but not this role because it somehow changes I think their argument was that it changes the text or that it changes the context of it all. It was complicated.
Who knows? I mean, my first thought is, I don't know. What do I know?
I don't know
I'm
either.
going to Mercy College for marriage and family therapy. What do I know?
A friend of mine said, he goes, also when you turn the sink on the stage, everyone knows it's not really running water; it's a prop.
Right.
I was like, and somehow we buy that.
Yeah.
That's the best argument I've heard in favor of casting anybody in anything. I'm like, well, there's a suspension of disbelief everywhere else. We know it's not really a house.
Yeah.
Are we okay with not knowing that he's really white?
I just feel like in 3 seconds, unless you're like genuinely a racist, the tone of his skin, it's like a character. You know what I mean? So I'm not one of those people that's like, I don't see color. I see everything.
Sure.
And I think race is a big thing. It's not like it's nothing. When you see somebody play a character, it's like the character.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But what do I mean, again, like I'm not the Arthur Miller estate. Right. I don't know.
And ladies and gentlemen, we got to get some people of color on here before we continue this conversation called.
Sorry.
Well, you're welcome to two whites talking about race.
Really?
No, but it's I'm not being the definitive answer of it all as much as I just want to open the door to conversation. Yeah. And I do want to have this conversation with people of color.
Yeah.
Our next segment is in response to an event that is going on in the coming weeks. It is called Broadway Sings for Gun Control. They're doing a bunch of Broadway stars have gotten together to do an event in favor of gun control called Broadway Sings for Gun Control. So this is a segment we've called Patty, Get Your Gun.
No, you can't get a man with a gun.
Here's my 2 cents on this. I have always been like I where I stand politically. I believe you are too. I'm always in favor of gun control. I'm certainly I'm about common sense gun laws, and I'm not here to share my views on gun control. But like I've always leaned towards the left when it comes to common sense gun laws.
Yeah,
for sure. But something about Broadway sings for gun control, which is a constitutional issue. First, is there anything that Broadway won't sing for?
It's fine.
Nothing.
Like, what are some things
Broadway
that...
sings for herpes simplex 1. It's Broadway will sing for any
Jeez.
fucking issue. But I'm also like, this is a constitutional issue.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is about rewriting the Second Amendment. And like, I'm not here to get into the logistics of that, but I'm like, is this really about that? Or is this really an excuse to sing and tacking it on to a social issue that for which no one can penetrate that? Because if I say, oh, this is bullshit, then they say, well, then you're not in favor of gun control. But I'm like, what is this concert doing?
Who's organizing it? Do you know?
Broadway. I probably should have looked that up before. I don't know.
No, I'm sorry. It doesn't matter. I was just genuinely
But it was
curious.
on Broadway. It was Broadway Sings for Gun Control.
Uh-huh.
But I was just like, okay, it's a cabaret.
Well, it's like Broadway Bears, which is such a glorious and important event.
It is.
But I mean, I think kind of along those lines, and I'm glad, and people are making tons of money for an important cause. But I don't know that the motivation for a lot of the dancers is purely altruistic. I think mostly it's just about like showing their ass with glitter and
It's insane, and we've talked about this on the show before. It raises so much fucking money,
and it's
for
great
AIDS.
night.
So you can't argue it.
You can't argue
I
it.
can't get up here and say Broadway Bear shouldn't happen because I would be a monster. It raises $10 million for AIDS, which, by the way, like they're pretty close to curing, probably because of Broadway Bears
and BCFA.
But let me tell you, when on the social media post for the week of Broadway Bears,
that's what I'm acknowledging. I'm just acknowledging, right?
People wearing glitter jock straps are not thinking about the medicine. I mean, for HIV,
which is kind of fine. What's the harm? But you're just like, it's
the harm is that you are not able to call people out on their narcissism, because if you say you're being a complete narcissist, they say, well, it's for charity.
Right. Yeah.
It's that charity safety net. You can't do anything wrong as long as it's for charity.
Yeah.
My closing thoughts on this are, Broadway, what we do on Broadway is we wrap our entire self-worth up into our show now too. These people on social media, when they're in a show, their entire self-worth is wrapped up into that show. Like, they don't post about anything else except the show. And that's a scary place to be in, because the likelihood, first of all, of your Broadway show that you're in being a hit is already really fucking slim. Out of your 19 or 18 Broadway shows, how many do you think would you say, can you guess, were like hits?
How many of the ones that I did were actual hits? Like a quarter of them.
A quarter of them,
yeah.
Right. So let's say like 4 or 5, maybe.
And that's a lot. Like maybe less than a quarter.
Right. Maybe
I would
like
say
that were
of them.
really, really like
truly hits. Like 4, like Spamalot, Moving Out.
Right. Those were hits.
Tommy, How to Succeed.
Those were all hits.
And then the rest might have just.
But How to Succeed, I'm not going to not count that. But like that was a revival.
It was
a revival.
I mean, like,
in some ways that was
also a revival.
Yeah. But like it's like original musical.
Yeah.
A handful.
Yeah.
So, the likelihood of your show really going on to be successful is slim. So to put your self-worth into a show.
No, I did it every time myself, back in the 90s even.
Right.
It's like being that girl that dates men that hit her. And she's just like, this time, this one, he's going to be great.
He's going to be different.
And then it's just like, wham, I don't mean to make fun of domestic, but like, yeah, no, that's definitely how I.
There was some comedian on TV that was like talking about, he was talking about women. He's like, when they keep going back to bad guys, and they always say like, he wasn't like this in the beginning. And he goes, could you imagine he was like that in the beginning? He was like, hey, I'm Steve. Fuck you. Nobody's like that in the beginning.
No, when you're doing that fucking...
And you think every show is going to be a hit when it's and it's always a hit in the rehearsal room.
I know.
You know what I mean? I have not done too many, and I've done a lot of flops, but I have not done too many shows that in the rehearsal room, I was like, oh, this is terrible. It's usually like it flops after the fact.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You love it until the audience is glaring at you. Oh.
Right, exactly.
At the end of the show.
Speaking of audiences glaring at us, I think it's time to have a good night. Thank you so much for checking in. Subscribe to us on YouTube at Booked It Podcast. And thank you for having co-anchor Lisa Gajda.
Thanks for having me.